lesson goes along with Degas and his use of the figure in his work. So to begin, when you start showing your kids work by Degas, of course we think about his dancers, and they're very lovely, and it shows his use of the human figure wonderfully. And so you can show them several images of those dancers, but he also did many other types of imagery. So he did people on horseback, he did scenes of families in everyday life, and so it's important to also show your students this type of work. And the camera was invented around this time, and you can see the idea of the camera in his work. So whereas before paintings were kind of stiff with people very much posed, his work was almost like a camera snapshot, catching a glimpse of everyday life as it happens. Has a lot of movement and spontaneity to his work. Because we're focusing on Degas' use of the human figure and his study of the human form, today's assignment is also going to be studying the human form. And this is really hard to do with a moving person. So instead of using the human body, we're going to be using an artist mannequin. So you can see that artists have used these for a very long time, and they're able to pose their little figures and have them on their desk, and then they can study the proportion and the angles of that human body as it moves. And of course they can be posed and moved doing all sorts of different things, maybe kicking a ball or dancing and doing all the things that Degas' people also did in his paintings. Now, of course, if you have one of these artist mannequins, you can definitely bring that to class and show the students. However, as most of us don't have these, or definitely not more than one, we're going to be making our own to put on the students' desks. Best case scenario, you can make one of these mannequins for every 2 students so they can share in groups of 2, or you can make one for every 4 students. Either way, you will take 2 pipe cleaners and also a half of a pipe cleaner and 4 small beads. They can be the really cheap plastic kind, and that's totally okay. To begin to make the mannequins for your students' table, you're going to place the pipe cleaners next to each other, pinch them in the middle, and simply twist to connect these 2 together. So now we have a top side and a bottom side. The bottom is going to be the legs, and the top is going to be the body and the arms. So I'm going to take the body and the arm side, pinch that in the middle, and then begin to twist and twist until that also connects. So even though we have a body shape going on here, it's kind of out of proportion, meaning that one size is too long compared to the other sizes. But we did that for a reason. I'm going to now make feet. Actually, before I make feet, I need to use these beads. We're going to be putting the beads onto each arm and each leg. And this is because we want to show the joints. We want to show the elbows, and we want to show the knees, because this is where the angled lines are. So you simply slide those on, and because of the pipe cleaner's fuzziness, they should stay right there in place. So we have arm, elbow, and arm, and legs and knees and legs. Now we can go ahead and make those feet. So I'm going to take the bottom of the pipe cleaner, make a small loop at the bottom, and then simply twist that like so. And I'm going to do that to both of his legs. The bigger the foot, the more stable your little guy will be as he stands on that table. So now we should have a nice proportionate human body here, and of course he needs a head. So this is where that half of a pipe cleaner comes into play. You can take that, twist it onto the neck, make sure it's nice and tight so his head doesn't flop around, and then bend it around and adhere the other side nice and tight onto that neck as well. So now we have an artist's mannequin, but very cheaply and very quickly made. We want to have this easy for the students to see. We want to make sure that it's taped on the table so that it's facing them. If it's sideways, they're not going to be able to draw the angles or the body very well. So that's why you want to have as many as possible so that all the students can see those mannequins right in front of them on the table, facing it. After you have your mannequins made at home, you're going to be taking them into the classroom, and your students will be drawing these to study the human figure in motion. You can use masking tape and fold his foot so that it's at an angle like so. And then you simply tape his foot to the table. Whenever we bend his body, we're going to be bending at those joints. So now I'm going to pose my little guy and make him do something. Maybe he'll be kicking his back leg up, like so. And of course you want to do your best to bend him and balance him so that he stays. But all in all, there we go. And so the students would draw this little guy, make sure that the proportions and the angles are correct, and then we could repose him doing something else. And the students could pose and pose and pose as many times as they wanted to do this assignment. You will begin by showing the students the mannequin and explaining that we'll be studying that mannequin in order to draw the human figure on our paper. But before they actually begin drawing on their paper, you will need to show them what you mean by doing an example on the whiteboard. So you will use your dry erase marker or a paper and pen, whatever you have, to do an illustration of how we look at the figure and then draw it. So what we want to do is show them how we can place the head where we want it to go. And then of course we have the body. Now you want to show them to look at the body and try and duplicate the length that they see in front of them. They wouldn't have a small head and a really long body. That wouldn't make any sense. So you want to make sure that the size of one piece correlates to the size of the other. And then of course they would study the arm and say, well, this arm goes out to the side. Then I see that it stops at this bead. So a line and then a circle. Then I can see that it goes up. Then I'll study this arm and I see that the angle is down like this. And then maybe go straight out to the side. So whenever we're looking for the straight lines of the pipe cleaners, and then we're looking for the circular beads of those joints, and we're drawing both of them in sequence. So again, with the leg, I would study the leg and I would see that the angle comes down, it stops at the bead, and then it comes down at some other type of angle, so maybe straight this time. And then of course the foot. So this is corresponding to what we learned in the drawing portion of oils. We see dots and angled lines, and this is very much the same concept of studying what we see. And then maybe this one, we see that it goes kind of out, and it comes to a stopping point, a joint, and then it comes out to the side, for example. So then we have shown the students how to use straight lines and dots to create these body parts in motion. The reason that we want to make sure that we are showing the students is because usually students like to draw things and they like to do a lot of curves. They don't like to stop and do those angled lines. And of course, bodies don't look like that. We want to make sure that we're showing them how to do the different, basically the bone structure underneath our muscle and skin is going to be these straight lines, just like that. Another problem that you're going to run into is after you show them an example and they begin to draw the mannequin that's on their table, they might not really study the angles. So for example, if they start with the head and they look at the body, they probably just want to draw the body straight down. However, what if the body line is kind of tilted like that? Then you will need to walk around and, show them how to look at the mannequin more closely and make sure that they are actually looking at the angles in front of them rather than just seeing it in their head and drawing it from their head. They actually have this mannequin in front of them in order to look at it and look at the angles of those pieces. So it's not something that they look at once. They have to repeatedly look at it and study the different components, studying the arms, the elbows, the head, the feet, all those different things. So after they've done one body, then you will repose it. If you have young students, probably the parents or the parent and the student can work together to pose it in a new position. With older students, they can take turns with their buddies, each trying to pose the mannequin. So I'm going to draw another example. So I would start with the head, look at the angle of the body, draw it, look at the leg, where it comes to a joint, then it changes its angle again. Maybe this one's doing a little jig. And so I'm really trying to study what I see in front of me, making sure I have these joints at where things are moving. There. And after your students have 2 or 3 figures, then they can begin to decide what their people are doing. These are bodies in motion, and you have to decide what kind of motions are they doing. Are these ballet routines? Are they playing soccer? Are they at the park? What are those people doing? Are they skateboarding? So your students can look at their figures on their paper and they can decide how to dress and complete these people. So even though we've just done the skeletal structure, we've just done the bones and the joints, now we get to add muscles and skin. So for the neck, of course, we know that the neck, is a little bit wider. We know that the arms are not just simple lines, they're actually 3-dimensional like this. So after I have my proportions and the angles right with my stick figure, I can now go in and start building a real body around this guy. So again, you can show your students on your whiteboard how to take your stick figure, your bone structure, and add muscles and body parts on top of that. The reason that we don't start with the full legs and arms is because a lot of times our proportions would be incorrect. We'd start at one place and things would get smaller or bigger, or things would get off as we traveled through drawing the body. So that's why we draw the whole thing in proportion and then layer on top of it with other things. And of course, we know that from Rembrandt. There's a line down the middle of his face and a line here, and that's where the eyes go. And we have this happy little guy dancing there. And I want to put some clothes on him. I think this guy is wearing a t-shirt and he has some hands. And he has on jeans, right? So then we can clothe our people after we do the muscles and the skin. We can add hair, and then we would have several figures doing some activity. If the students have time, then go ahead, give out colored pencils and allow them to finish this in color.